Mr. Dark Whispers.
Imagine this. You're just trying to get home after a long, soul-crushing shift. Take a shortcut, a dark alley between two abandoned buildings, just to save a few minutes. Harmless, right? But then the shadows start to move. You feel eyes on you. You hear whispers. And suddenly, you're not just lost in the city, you're lost in a nightmare. A nightmare of blood, of chanting, of unspeakable rituals. And when you scream the truth, when you plead for help, the world just looks at you like you're insane. This is the story of John Beichel, a man who saw too much and paid the ultimate price, only to have the chilling truth buried with him. If you've ever felt that chilling prickle of dread, that gut-wrenching certainty that something horrific is happening just out of sight, then hit that like button, subscribe, and prepare yourself. Because this story will make you question what lurks in the abandoned corners of your city, and what happens when the truth is too terrifying to believe. It was just another Tuesday night, or rather, early Wednesday morning. The kind of hour where the city exhales and the exhausted few still moving are either heading home or just starting their day in the shadows. I was the former. My name is John Beichel, and I was making my usual pilgrimage home from my shift at the local 7-Eleven. Worked the graveyard shift, the one where the fluorescent lights buzz louder and the coffee tastes perpetually stale. I clocked out at 7 p.m. every day, regular as clockwork, and since my apartment was only 5 minutes away, I was usually walking through my front door by 7:05. Sleep was my only destination. But the weekends were different. Instead of going straight home and collapsing, I'd grab a quick shower, change out of my uniform, and then go pick up my daughter at daycare. She'd stay with my ex-wife during the week, and the weekends were my precious time with her, and this was the weekend. My daughter, my everything. I remember sitting on that bus bench, my shoulders hunched against the damp chill of the night, the weariness, a heavy cloak wrapped around me. The bus station, usually bustling, was a desolate island under the harsh glow of sodium lamps. I inquired about the bus to Boston Street, my voice raspy with fatigue. But the worker behind the bulletproof glass just shook his head. His eyes, sunken and tired like my own, held a grim sympathy. "Last bus left 30 minutes ago, pal. You just missed it." A sigh heavy with resignation escaped my lips. My shoulders slumped further. Great, just what I needed. Checked my watch. 2:30 a.m. My body screamed for sleep, for the oblivion of my mattress. In a rotten mood, I decided to walk home. It wouldn't be the first time. While walking, my phone, a battered Nokia, felt like a lifeline. I pulled it out, thumbing through the primitive GPS map. I squinted at the glowing screen, tracing the familiar routes, when a flicker of a different path caught my eye. A shortcut, something I'd never noticed before, promised to cut my walk down to a mere 5 minutes. 5 minutes less of shuffling through the cold, 5 minutes closer to sleep. It seemed like a gift from the universe. I started to follow the path. Almost immediately, I noticed something off. The area was a bit shady, more than a bit. It was a narrow passage, less of a street and more of a forgotten alley, wedged between two monolithic shutdown call centers. Their windows, dark and vacant, stared out like dead eyes. The air here was heavy, stagnant, carrying the faint metallic scent of rust and decay. But I kept walking, driven by the promise of sleep, the lure of those precious 5 minutes. The further I walked into that passage, the stronger the feeling became. That prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the irrational certainty that I was being watched. My heart started to beat a little faster, a nervous flutter against my ribs. I looked here and there, my head swiveling, eyes darting into the deeper shadows, trying to pinpoint the source of the unease. Then I saw it. A dark figure. It was perched on the above balcony of the building on my left, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised purple of the pre-dawn sky. It was too still, too dark, almost a part of the oppressive blackness itself. My breath hitched, nerves tightened like piano wire in my stomach. Every rational fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to sprint out of that eerie passage and back to the familiarity of the main street. But something else, a foolish, desperate need to understand, to know what was watching me, pulled me forward. Curiosity, the silent killer. I decided to investigate. I entered the building, The heavy, rusting door groaned in protest, echoing eerily in the cavernous interior. The air inside was colder, denser, thick with the scent of dust and disuse. My footsteps echoed, unnaturally loud, as I moved through the vast, empty lobby. The space was a graveyard of abandoned desks, tangled wires, and forgotten monitors, all shrouded in a thick layer of dust. I started exploring the place, my nerves fraying with every creak of the old building. Then I saw him. A security guard. He was slumped in a chair, his back to me, facing a blank wall, mumbling to himself. His voice was a low, disjointed drone, words too quiet and too garbled to understand. A flicker of relief, quickly followed by a new wave of unease. A living person. Here, but why was he mumbling at a wall? Why was I feeling this overwhelming sense of wrongness? "Hey!" I called out, my voice sounding weak, foreign in the oppressive silence. "Are you all right?" He didn't acknowledge me at first, just kept mumbling. I tried to say something else, to get his attention, to break through whatever strange trance he was in. But suddenly, as if jolted by an electric shock, he sprang to his feet. He started running, not walking, not shuffling, running, a panicked, desperate sprint. He vanished around a corner, swallowed by the gloom of the corridor. His footsteps fading into silence. I stood there, alone again, utterly frustrated. Asterisk, what the hell was that? My mind, already weary, struggled to process the bizarre encounter. Was it a prank? Was he on something? I just needed to rest for a few minutes, to gather my thoughts before continuing my trek home. But the silence didn't last. A new sound pierced the oppressive quiet. Noises faint at first, then growing louder, coming from another floor. A low, rhythmic thumping. A guttural murmur. Against my better judgment, against every survival instinct screaming at me to leave, I followed the noises, drawn by an invisible string. A perverse fascination. My footsteps were cautious now, measured as I ascended the creaking staircase. The sounds grew clearer, more distinct, as I climbed higher. Reaching the 5th floor, a faint, pulsing red light bled from under a doorway, and with it, a strange, guttural chanting. The sound was ancient, primal, a discordant symphony that vibrated through the very floorboards. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. Dread, thick and icy, coated my tongue. I reached the door, my hand trembling as I pushed it. It opened slightly, revealing a narrow sliver of the nightmare within. I peered through the crack, my eyes struggling to adjust to the dim, bloody glow. But after what I saw, I was deeply, utterly silenced. John saw them. A cult, circle of figures, cloaked in shadow, illuminated by the macabre red glow of candles or some unseen light source. And in the center of their morbid tableau, the dead body of the security guard. His eyes, wide and vacant, stared up at the ceiling, unseeing. They were performing a ritual, grotesque, sickening mockery of communion. They were collecting his blood, not just draining it, but drinking it. Dipping cupped hands, gourds, some unknown vessels, into the pooling crimson and raising it to their lips. Drinking it as if it was some kind of beverage. A sacred libation, feast. The smell hit him then, metallic, coppery, sickeningly sweet. The air, thick with it, filled his lungs, choking him. His mind, already pushed to its limits by the exhaustion and the bizarre encounters of the night, shattered. The disbelief, the horror, the sheer, unimaginable depravity of the scene before him broke through his carefully constructed composure. He couldn't control his scream. It ripped from his throat, a raw, terrified sound that echoed in the vast, high-ceilinged room. The cult members, startled, their faces a blur of contorted malice in the flickering red light, turned. Their eyes, dark and predatory, fixed on him, and then they ran after him. A wave of inhuman hunger, a pack of wolves descending. John didn't think, didn't plan. His body moved on pure instinct. He bolted. Back through the door, down the stairs, a desperate, scrambling flight into the suffocating darkness of the abandoned building. The sounds of their pursuit, their guttural shouts, their pounding footsteps echoed behind him, terrifying symphony of impending doom. He slammed through the heavy lobby door, burst out into the cool, damp night, gasping, choking, not daring to look back. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs gave out, until he stumbled onto the familiar, blessed asphalt of Boston Street. Bathed in the sickly yellow glow of a distant streetlight, he tried to tell all of this to the police. Found the nearest station, stumbled in, wild-eyed, disheveled, covered in dust and sweat, his voice hoarse, raw with terror. He recounted every horrifying detail. The shortcut, the shadowy figure, the mumbling guard, the blood ritual, the cult, the body. He pleaded with them, his words tumbling out in a frantic, incoherent stream. But unfortunately, they didn't believe him. They looked at him with the familiar, pitying expressions. The kind you reserve for a homeless man shouting at pigeons or a drunk hallucinating. They saw the tired eyes, the disheveled clothes, the wild, desperate certainty in his voice. They listened, patiently, wrote down a few notes, and then, gently, firmly, suggested he go home, get some rest, maybe see a doctor. They promised to look into it, a hollow, meaningless phrase. They never found that building, not the one he described, not the one between the call centers. It was as if it had never existed, or as if it had simply vanished. After all this, the relentless disbelief, the suffocating trauma of what he had witnessed, John couldn't sustain it. The world, once a predictable, mundane place, had fractured into a terrifying mosaic of hidden horrors and dismissive stares. The images burned behind his eyes. The dead guard, the blood, the smiling, chanting faces. The knowledge that he had seen something unspeakable and that no one, absolutely no one, believed him, gnawed at his sanity. He ended up in the asylum, sterile, white-walled prison where the whispers were his own and the monsters were confined only to his mind, or so they told him. He was diagnosed with acute paranoid psychosis, a convenient label for a man who had seen too much truth. The medication dulled the edges of the nightmares, blurring the lines, but it couldn't erase them entirely. He clung to the truth, a desperate, fragile secret. He tried to tell the doctors, the nurses, the other patients, but their eyes held the same pity, the same knowing disbelief. He committed suicide after some time. The official report would say it was a tragic consequence of his illness, a final act of despair from a broken mind. But in his last moments, John knew. He knew he wasn't insane. He knew what he had seen. And he knew that the silence of the world, their polite disbelief, was part of the horror. But after hearing the news of his ending his life, a ripple of unease, a flicker of doubt seemed to pass through the police department. A man driven to this? Over a delusion? Just a routine check. They started investigating, quiet, almost reluctant inquiry. They looked for the building. They followed his frantic, incoherent directions. They scoured the area between the two shut-down call centers. But they never found that building. Not a trace, not a single brick or broken window. It was as if the earth had swallowed it whole, leaving only an empty space where nightmares had once manifested. John Bickle's story is a chilling testament to the fragility of truth when confronted with the unbelievable. He was a man, ordinary and exhausted, who stumbled into a horror that defied logic, a horror that the world was simply not equipped to comprehend. His revenge, his ultimate payoff, was not in bringing justice to the cult, but in the unsettling, lingering doubt he planted in the minds of those who dismissed him. His death, a desperate act of final communication, sparked a fleeting search, the fact that the building simply vanished. That is John's vindication. The proof that something monstrous existed, something that could erase its own tracks, and then, perhaps, move on to find its next victim. His fate serves as a grim warning. What horrors do we walk past every day, nestled between the mundane, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the weary, the curious, the unlucky to stumble upon them? What unspeakable rituals are performed in the forgotten corners of our cities? And when the truth is too terrifying to believe, who will listen, who will fight? Or will we, like John Bickle, be silenced, erased, and ultimately forgotten by a world that prefers its monsters to stay in the shadows of imagination? John Bickle saw something so unspeakable, it cost him everything. But his desperate plea, his ultimate sacrifice, leaves us with a chilling question. What if the real horror isn't just what lurks in the dark, but the chilling indifference of a world that refuses to see it? If John's descent into madness and his grim discovery gave you chills, if it made you question the very fabric of your reality, smash that like button and tell us in the comments. What's the most unbelievable thing you've ever witnessed that no one else believed? And of course, subscribe for more stories that will make you rethink every shortcut you take.